Okay, so let's go into just another topic here. Now, I get people in this group here asking me all the time on reprints of old photos. Now, you can do that as long as they're so old, as long as they're at least 80 years from the time the person would be deceased, is basically, I think, the gist on it. You're fairly safe if you find, 1920s or before photos to reproduce them. Most photos that are reproduced aren't going to sell for very much money. I just picked some random person here to give you a little insight on this. Let's look at his other items to give you an idea here. Now, a lot of things just aren't worth much money for reprint-wise. If you look at the price, he's selling them free shipping. Again, it doesn't matter who it is, where they're at, or any of that aspect of it. Now, this person's from Canada, so they're just probably sending this out in a little envelope. It does say the frame is not included. So they took one picture and they just print them as they sell them. So I would imagine they have a decent printer at their facility, then they're just printing them off. For $5.95, including shipping, they're making maybe $2 or so after all fees and shipping costs. Printing costs are done. They've sold 45 of them, so they've roughly made $90 on all of that work. That's a lot of work for what you're getting out of these. Now, even going down to this one here, they sold 61 copies. These are 5x7s. Again, I said they're small, so they can be sent in an envelope, just a standard envelope, and hope they don't get bent would be my guess. I doubt they put them in a little sleeve. Maybe they do. I didn't go into all the details. The point of the matter is, you're not going to get much for them. There is a market for some of the earlier ones. It just depends. So like on this one, they may have made $124 on these 61. So it just depends on what you're selling. It would be worth listing these two. They could keep rolling out the money as much as they want. Another one here, interesting one with long hair. They sold 19. Again, that's the price they're selling them that at. 19 of the one below it. They only have one of those. So a lot of the other ones on here, what I saw, there's a lot of watchers and not many people buying them. Because if it's a, let's say, multiple listing like these, you can see that they sold 45, they sold 61. Reproductions, in my opinion, just aren't worth the hassle for the most part. Like here's one, they made 30 prints of this, 5x7s again, $5.95. That's shipping again, and this is from Canada to here. That's what it would cost me, is nothing to ship it to me, by the way it looks here. So, 13 sold on this one, 21 sold on this one. I mean, there's some money. Don't get me wrong. They could just slap a label on it, but you're making $2 a pop. Maybe if you're selling 60 different photos, you can make literally a living on this. 60 good photos that sell constantly, but it's just usually not possible to do that. 29 on this one. It's an interesting image. In fact, is that the same one? Yeah. See, they've got two of the same ones, which technically is not allowed. Maybe it's a different size. 5x7, 8x12. So size-wise. So now you're going up to a whole sheet of print paper. They're maybe making $5 now at this one here. So they made 20 in the length of time this has been up. Again, look at some of the totals on here. Not super huge, but they do sell enough. It's not going to be enough to live on just this type of income on something like this. Even the Houdini one you'd think would be a decent seller. Most people don't collect Houdini stuff these days. It's a rare breed of, say, magicians and things along that line. Almost any of these are limited to the amount of people that will collect them. So one thing you'd always want to do is get images that are just fabulous images of just something that everybody wants. I know it's hard to say what that may be, but like here is a Civil War soldier. He's ID'd. It'd be something that somebody would want. A Civil War photo of any kind would pretty much be guaranteed to not have a copyright still on it. Pretty much anything below 1900 you are safe to reproduce. Even newer than that, but I wouldn't really mess with too much newer than that. Nothing newer than, say, 1920, just so you have less of a chance of something happening. So let's go back down to the bottom. I'm sorry. Guys know I flipped through here very quickly. See if we can find any more that they sold. They've got a lot of watchers on some of these. Some of these, they may only have one listing up at a time, and when it sells, then they list it again. It's hard to say, but when you have 14 watchers and people aren't buying it at $5.95, that's the risk factor. No offense to anybody if this is somebody's store or anything like that. This is the kind of things I look at and look for. In fact, some of the photos are really interesting. That's a really unique one there, in my opinion. Now, one thing I want to show you on this person is that they are technically breaking the law in some of these images here. Let me get down to the ones. Now, I spent some time looking through here just to make sure that I didn't miss something and had the best information for you. Hang on just a second here. I'm going to show you one that violates the law in just a second. Now, I haven't turned anybody in. I don't really care to waste my time on something like that. You can't do famous people or things along that line that are, owned by a company. This one here is illegal. They do not own Boris Karloff's permission, nor do they own Universal Studios' rights to print this. So although most of the other ones are safe, something like this is against the law. This is violation of their copyright law. So don't get yourself into this if you want to make copies. Some of these Native American ones you'll have to watch out for just because somebody owns the rights for some books on some of those. So I'm always cautious on these. Like the Billie Holiday one, somebody owns the estate rights to this image. This person cannot sell those. I know they are, and there's just so many people selling that kind of stuff that people can get away with it. But the point of it is, don't do it on stuff like that. It's not worth the hassle. If you're going to try and reprint or sell, you got to just get the best image you can. Let's just look up right now just a reprint photo, just to give you a little more idea. There is a market, as I said, but it's not great anymore because for 10 or 15 bucks more on a lot of these cases, you can get the real deal. Like this one here, if this is truly a reprint, it's against the rules. You can't do stuff like that. A lot of these are free shipping or going for almost nothing. Let's look at one of these just to give you an idea on this. Movie stars are a big no-no. That's something that can get you in trouble. Let's see here. Reprint, dealer or reseller. Yeah, I don't think they say what kind of reprint. You can't copy any movie star or anything like that legally. Any of that stuff will get you in trouble. Like Dragon Ball right here. If this isn't from the company, it's from China, so it's probably not legit in my opinion. I'm not saying everything from China is not legit, but a lot of that stuff is just not correct. And when they have autographs too, I'd just be very careful on any of that stuff because probably about 85 or better % of a lot of the autographs you see online is fake. Like here you've got a reprint of Marilyn Monroe, illegal. You can't sell that without it. I almost guarantee you there's no ownership to that. Glossy photo reprint, Wizard of Oz, same thing, can't do that. Even the football ones, you can't do a reprint photo. So as you go through here, just take a look at what you see in here. You can see that in fact, let's go up to the top and let's look by highest first. That's about the only thing I can tell you. So here's some other people that are doing stuff. Now here's another interesting one. Here's somebody who redoes tintypes from your photo. So they'll turn in a photo of a 5x7 into a tintype. And they'll sell you 10 of them for roughly 390 bucks. Now here's a concert photo. Now concert photos are a little different. You don't technically have the right to sell the artist's image. Now if you take a photo of somebody, obviously I don't know how they can do much to you for making a copy for, personal, but if you start selling massive quantities of like Grateful Dead images that you took, you're marketing a person's physical character, and some of that is definitely illegal too. Now, I don't get in much to that aspect of it. I just don't mess with copies, even if it was something that I personally took. I've sold some famous images to, like the Big Bopper. I had some Big Bopper slides. You can't market or do anything. You can't even print some of these in a book if you wanted to on some stuff like this. So, again, there is a market, but you really got to know what you're doing. Most of the ones I see on eBay violate the law at some point, so just be very, very cautious on what you do on this. Photos and copies are just not the way to go on this. You're going to get yourself into trouble by copying some of them. As you saw, some do sell, but not all of them. Let's look at this one here. Ernest Hemingway, his estate is owned by somebody. It's just a fact. You can't just go and make reprints because they're even telling you it's a reprint. Inkjet reprints using best ink and paper. That is against the law. I mean, you're going to have people tell you, no, that's not correct, but I can assure you that it is. They're just printing them at home and selling them off that way. It's just not something that you are legally allowed to do because, again, the Hemingway estate still owns the rights to these. These are professional photos that, probably are family photos of some sort, so don't get yourself in trouble with stuff like that. So it's just a touch on this. I may touch on this in a video on its own, but I've had a lot of questions recently. Nothing wrong with asking any questions you guys want, but the point of the matter is on this one here, you can't do people's likenesses. If it's from the last, 100 years, you can't do it, because there's a length of time, and the estates of a lot of these people can still own the rights to the image. Maybe their book's not on copyright anymore. Maybe it's public domain, but the images still may not be. So if you're interested, you better darn well look into it. I know even if you're doing a couple copies of something, of someone famous or something like the Frankenstein one, that'll get you in trouble. You could get a cease and desist. On Amazon, it'll get you booted if somebody turns you in. And darn well on Amazon, they have scanners and stuff they can tell for stuff like that. Now, I sell movie photos in 8x10s, but mine are all official from the company with their numbers and everything else. People will copy the ones that I have even. They'll do their own prints of them and sell them. You can almost always tell it if you've seen enough of them because they're grainy for the most part, just due to the glare and stuff like that. Let's just look up just a couple items here. I'm going to show you just a few other things that I look for. We've got another section coming up in this one. I'm going to talk about postcards in just a few minutes here as well, just to give you another idea on this. Now, people pass on oddball things. I lived on the beach, and we did all the shell shops and the whole work. So I know without a doubt that there's a ton of money in seashells. I've even found some good ones on the beach when I lived just a block or so from the beach. Strange, bizarre, whatever you want to call it. I like these kind of things. I like natural and nature in general. So this is really a neat, interesting thing. I know the giant clams always go well. This is a 13-inch clam. I know you're not going to find a lot of these stuff, but things like these type of seashells do show up occasionally in big bins. I've bought bags of seashells at Savers that were worth money. Now, every seashell isn't worth some money. You're going to have to know. This is another one of those areas that you'd have to know a little bit about. This is a real good example here. Some of them you'll obviously know right off the bat that it's something really bizarre and unique, like this one here. That's a really good one. Most of the giant clams of any type sell for some good money. We're talking, this is 16 inches. You're talking at least a foot. If you have a clamshell, even a half of one for a foot or more across, it's usually worth looking into. And look at the weight on this one. They're very heavy. That's another thing. Now, I've picked up some when we lived in Florida. We went to Tarpon Springs. The sponge docks are down there. And there's seashells and stuff pretty much everywhere you go. So anyway, the more interesting and bizarre it is, usually the higher it sells. Like coral and stuff like that. Now, some of this you got to watch out for because some of it is illegal because people are illegally poaching it and then selling it later on. Like this massive one here, 21 inches across. You see anything like that, you'd be a fool not to buy it, I should say. Big, giant seashells. This conch shell here is huge. Regular conch shells, at least on the coast when I lived in Florida, you could still get a few bucks from back then. Now, some of these obviously aren't from this area, but there are shell collectors all over the place. You get the right assortment here. This one, somebody just sold an assortment. $345. Again, it just depends on what you find, what you have. You will see a bunch of them in millimeters, just because a lot of the people selling these are from overseas. So that's one thing to consider when you're looking at these. Nautiluses or things that look like nautiluses like this are just extravagantly sought after. Now, this is a 14 to 15 inch. We found little ones of these on the beach that were just like an inch tall, or an inch long. So it just depends on what you're looking for. But you can go to a garage sale And someone went overseas, they went to Japan, they went to Italy, and they brought back seashells. I have seen seashells at garage sales, flea markets, church sales. Geez, anywhere I go, even at auctions, I've bought big boxes of seashells for like 10 and 15 bucks because everybody thinks they're just tourist junk that someone picked up off the beach. This goes back to like the washed up sea glass that I showed in a video too. These are better, and there's people that literally just go to the beach, certain places that they know that this kind of stuff washes up. There's a population of a certain animal or a certain shell that would be found there because that's where the creatures or the animals actually live, so they wash up on shore. Just like there's areas that have sea glass that wash up all the time. When I lived on the coast, we did find certain types of things. There was a beach that we could find sand dollars on all day long. Now, sand dollars are pretty common, so they're not worth much money. But if you pay attention and look at some of these, judge by the size. Now, size of one may not compare to the size of another one. So like a 4-inch shell of something like one of these here in the middle that look identical for $277, a 4-inch shell might be the biggest those come in, and that would be worth a ton of money. While something like this, maybe a 10 or 15-inch shell would be the biggest. Just like some of the insects and bugs I've talked about, seashells have the same uniqueness to them. The better, the weirder the pattern like this one here, the better they go for. It's just a given. Size is always a factor in my book on these. These little tendrils sticking off too. Another good form. Things that are fragile. Here's a really nice one here too. Now this one's a bigger one. I've looked at some of these, so I do know somewhat about these. Stuff like this here too. These are things that I have here in my possession. Shells and stuff. Just like turtle shells even in some aspect used to be a big popular thing to sell. Some of them have been banned on eBay, so just be careful. Items like this, they would show up on the shore. Obviously not the size of these here. These are really large examples. But if you look through here, you're going to see some decent prices for these sorts of things. I know, yes, a lot of them are from overseas, but over here you can still sell big lots of them. They're not all from overseas. People will bring these back. I've got seashells here. We picked them up at the beach when I lived there. I've sold them. We've sold all kinds of things that people just think are junk. I almost can guarantee you've probably seen, everybody watching this video has probably seen a bag of seashells and thought nothing of. Most bags of seashells are like anything else. It's not going to be worth much. But to find a couple of the diamonds in the rough on those are where you're going to make your money. We have sold them. Abalone I usually buy for a couple bucks. I find those or I used to, I should say, at Savers and some thrift stores as well. You can get 10 or 15 bucks for those, believe it or not, depending on the size. Let's pop down here and keep going through here just to get to a few other things. Now, size, again, maybe not the essential matter of it. Sometimes it's just quantity of similars as well. People make necklaces out of these. They make jewelry out of these. Abalone, they'll cut up and make other items out of as well, too. It just depends. Like the coral branches here. People will mount them on wood and stuff like that, and then they'll sell them as a display piece. They'll even sell some of these to people who have fish tanks. So, I mean, there's more than just like collectors of this sorts of thing. The fancier, again, the larger, that's what you really want. Big bulk lots usually always sell. Now, they list this as a beach wedding theme. These are just small, worth very little. In this field of like seashells and stuff like this, bulk usually sells. So if I spend a couple bucks on a big, and I'm talking, 10 pounds or so of seashells, which again, that's not an unheard of thing. 5-10 bucks, you can easily get some big assortments of seashells if you're at the right sale. Auctions, I can get them at quite often. A couple times a month, I can run into seashells at an auction. Now, I don't tell you everything we sell, obviously. I can't give every single thing away. But this is a field. Let me let that go on its own. This is a field that you can make some money in across the board. It's just something that most people don't think of, I guess, is the gist of it. Let's go down here. Again, the fanciness is a big help on it here as well, too. Now, here is abalone right here. This is 18 of them for $142 shipped. Now, there's some weight in it, so it's probably going to be around, say, I don't know, 24 bucks, I'm guessing, maybe on the shipping here. So they still got 120 bucks out of them for 18. It's roughly, say, 6 to 10 bucks on something like that. I can pick them up relatively cheaply. Collection-wise, or just like butterfly collections or insect collections where they're pegged on a board. If you find a board array of things like this, I always buy them if they're dirt cheap enough, because a specimen collection always sells for some good money. Let's see if I can bounce down. I thought I just saw another one there. Yeah, here's another specimen collection. All of these go extremely well. Now, not just seashells in general. There's other things like... Now, here's another category, and I've talked about these before, so this shouldn't be something super new to you. I got a few offers. We will leave those. I'm not going to mess with those now. Bugs I've talked about, specimens in general, silkworms, moths, dioramas. Bugs in general can sell for some good money. So you just got to pay attention to these. Even things that are preserved in resin like this still can go for some good money. This is a fire coral sea spider. It's made to look like coral, and it's actually a bug, a spider basically. Beetles always sell well. Again, size. You want size. Butterfly displays I always buy. Butterfly samples, specimens, I always buy. You can see certain ones go for a lot more than others. Some of these are coming from foreign countries, and they were harvested or raised, I should say, and then when they die, they mount them or sell them dried or wet so that the person who gets them can still mount them and do stuff. We bought them just like this. I've bought many. We've dried them out and preserved them and then turned around and resold them for like 5 times what we paid for them. So you just have to know a little bit. Specimens can be anything. Now, another thing people will do is they'll take something like this, a skeleton of an animal or something like that, and they'll cast it. And then they will sell multiple copies. That's another line of things you can do if you're interested in doing stuff like that. Nature, seashells, animals, bones, insects, all of that goes for some decent money. Again, it depends on what you pay for it. But people will cast these, and they'll sell them for educational. Bones and skeletal figures on Amazon sell very, very well. Not just around Halloween, but just in general. And people will set up these displays of them in the whole works. Now let's change this from specimen and put skeleton on there. So here we go to just skeleton. I know this may seem creepy to some people, but I'm telling you, when I lived on the coast, selling bones and stuff was a huge thing, especially shark's jaws and things like that. Crocodile, alligator skeletons go very well. Any of this stuff. And as I said, with some skulls, people will make copies of them, a mold, and make a ton of them. It's just something that people will do. You'll run into it. You'll hopefully get the nature of this stuff. And it doesn't just have to be a certain type of thing. Here's an alligator gar. Now, this one's a taxidermy, trophy, skeleton. Any of this stuff can go for some good money. It just depends on what you're doing. Like if you live on the coast in Florida, you can scour the shops and many times come up with stuff, you know, just like this. Again, it may seem morbid to some people, but, you know, it's just a fact of nature. Now, let's type in insect in the same category. Now, we're in animals, just to give you an idea here. Now, I've got 2 more sections for this video, as I said. I'm going to talk about postcards in just a few minutes here after this section, and then we're just going to go talk some generalized stuff about holidays for future listing and stuff like that, too. So insect-wise, same thing. Bugs bigger they are, the better they are. Assortments, things along that line. Look for the odd, bizarre. Again, you're not going to run into all these types of things. There are some definite items and bugs that we found here in this country, wild, that we were able to make some really good money on. So just keep that in mind when you're looking around. It doesn't have to be, you know, the odd, bizarre bug or beetle or anything. Butterflies and frame pieces and all of that kind of stuff go very, very well for us. I don't think I hang on to anything bug, insect, or animal related for very long. Now, I buy only good stuff. Butterflies are probably what you're going to find the most of. Butterflies, moths, and maybe some beetles. Now, even let me get back into focus here. Even these scorpions that are embedded in there. Now this is 100 of them, so this is a little different story. These are small, they're not something big. These are something somebody would use for jewelry. The big ones in lucite I do sell too. Stuff like that I have found at Savers. So just dig into this a little bit here. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's an area. I've had some questions on this as well. I'm going to be talking about some plants and seeds because that season is going to be coming up in a few more months that you'll be selling them ahead of time as well. So just be cautious on some things, though. There are some that you can't legally sell because they're endangered, but most anything you'll find in your backyard or something are safe. Again, you're going to think that's crazy, but I think outside of the box. We've made a lot of money on bugs. We've made a lot of money on seeds. We've made a lot of money on plants. We've bought fruits at the grocery store, ate the fruit, and sold the seeds. We've bought, cases of, seeds that haven't been touched. You got to make sure they're not out of date, things like that, too, if you're buying seeds and things. But that's a touch on this. Let's hop over now, and let's talk about some postcards right this minute.